There is a sticker on your banana. A tiny, almost invisible blue and yellow sticker. You've probably peeled it off 1,000 times without a second thought. But that sticker, and the company behind it, is connected to CIA-backed coups, the overthrow of foreign governments, decades of monopoly so brutal it rewrote the laws of international business, and a criminal conviction so serious it made headlines around the world. And none of it would have happened without bananas. This is the story of Chiquita, and it is genuinely one of the most extraordinary corporate stories ever told. Part 1. The fruit that changed everything. In the 1870s, bananas were exotic. Most Americans had never seen one. They were expensive, they rotted fast, and getting them from the tropics to a grocery store in Boston before they turned black seemed basically impossible. Then a man named Miner Keith had an idea. Keith was building a railroad through Costa Rica, a brutal, deadly project that killed thousands of workers, including his own brothers. To help pay for it, he started planting bananas along the tracks. He would grow them, load them on the train, ship them to New Orleans, and sell them before they spoiled. It worked spectacularly. By 1899, Keith merged his banana operation with another company called Boston Fruit. The result was the United Fruit Company, one of the most powerful corporations the world had ever seen. And here is where the story starts getting dark. United Fruit didn't just sell bananas. They bought land, enormous amounts of land. In Guatemala, Honduras, Costa Rica, Colombia, Panama, they bought or leased millions of acres of the most fertile tropical land on the planet. They built their own railroads, their own ports, their own telegraph lines, their own towns. They were not a company operating in these countries. They were, in many ways, more powerful than the governments of these countries. People started calling them El Pulpo, the octopus, because their tentacles were everywhere. Part 2. The Banana Republic. You've probably heard the phrase Banana Republic. It's used today to describe a corrupt, unstable country run by a small elite at the expense of everyone else. That phrase was literally invented to describe what United Fruit did to Central America. The writer O. Henry coined it in 1904. He wasn't being metaphorical. He was describing a real system where an American fruit company effectively owned the government, the infrastructure, and the economy of entire nations. Honduras is the clearest example. By the early 1900s, United Fruit and its rivals owned so much Honduran land and controlled so much of the country's export revenue that the Honduran government was essentially dependent on them. Tax breaks, land grants, political favors, all flowed toward the fruit companies. When local politicians tried to push back, to tax the companies, to reclaim land, to give workers better conditions, United Fruit had a very simple response. They bribed whoever needed bribing. And if that didn't work, they called Washington. The most dramatic example came in 1954. Guatemala had elected a Democratic president named Jacobo Arbenz. Arbenz wanted to reform Guatemala's land distribution, a reasonable idea given that 2% of the population owned 70% of the land. His land reform program threatened United Fruit directly. The Guatemalan government wanted to buy back unused United Fruit land at the value United Fruit had declared on its own tax returns, which the company had massively undervalued to avoid taxes. United Fruit responded by lobbying the Eisenhower administration. They hired PR firms. They invited journalists on tours of Guatemala and framed Arbenz as a communist threat. They spent enormous sums convincing Washington that a democratically elected Guatemalan president was a Soviet danger. In 1954, the CIA launched Operation PB Success. Arbenz was overthrown in a US-backed coup. A military junta took power. Decades of violent conflict followed, a civil war that killed over 200,000 people. United Fruit kept its land. Part 3. The sticker, the brand, the reinvention. By the 1960s, United Fruit had a serious problem. Its name was toxic. Decades of coups, exploitation, and scandal had made it one of the most hated corporations in the world. So they did what companies always do when their brand becomes a liability. They changed the name. In 1963, United Fruit rebranded as Chiquita Brands International. They created the iconic Miss Chiquita, the woman in the fruit hat, cheerful and tropical and completely unthreatening. And they introduced the blue and yellow sticker. The sticker was genius. Before it, bananas were anonymous. You bought a banana. You had no idea where it came from or who grew it. The Chiquita sticker turned a commodity into a brand. It said, "This banana is certified, reliable, premium." It worked. Chiquita became synonymous with bananas globally. The sticker became one of the most recognized brand marks in the world. But underneath the cheerful branding, the same fundamental problems remained. Chiquita still controlled vast plantations worked by poorly paid laborers. It still wielded enormous political influence in the countries it operated in. It still had a business model built on controlling every step of the supply chain, growing, shipping, ripening, distributing. And it was about to face a series of crises that would expose just how fragile that model really was. Part 4. The Unravelling. In the 1990s, Chiquita faced an unexpected enemy, the European Union. Europe had a preferential trade system that gave favorable terms to bananas from former European colonies in the Caribbean. Chiquita, which grew its bananas in Latin America, was disadvantaged. Chiquita's CEO, Carl Lindner, responded by spending millions lobbying the US government to challenge Europe at the World Trade Organization. It became one of the longest-running trade disputes in WTO history, lasting nearly 2 decades and costing both sides billions. Chiquita won legally, but the financial damage was already done. Years of trade war uncertainty, combined with debt from aggressive expansion, pushed the company to the edge. Then came something nobody could spin. In 2001, it emerged that Chiquita had been making payments to the AUC, a Colombian paramilitary group classified by the United States government as a terrorist organization. Chiquita's defense was that they had paid the AUC for protection, that their Colombian workers were being threatened, and the company had no choice. Whether that was true or a convenient justification, the payments were real and they were illegal. In 2007, Chiquita pleaded guilty to doing business with a terrorist organization. They paid a $25 million fine. Several executives faced criminal investigations. For a company that had spent 40 years trying to distance itself from the sins of United Fruit, for a company built on the cheerful blue and yellow sticker, it was a catastrophic moment. Chiquita filed for bankruptcy in 2001, restructured, and returned to profitability. But the damage to its reputation and its balance sheet was significant. In 2014, it was acquired by a Brazilian-Irish consortium in a deal worth around $680 million. The brand still exists. The sticker is still on your banana, but the company that pioneered the banana as a global branded product had changed hands, reduced in scale, and left behind a history that is genuinely difficult to look at clearly. Part 5. What we can learn. So what does the Chiquita story actually teach us? Because it would be easy to dismiss it as an old story, a relic of a less regulated era when corporations could do things that would be unthinkable today. But I think it's more relevant than that. Here's why. First, branding is extraordinarily powerful, but it cannot permanently paper over reality. The Chiquita sticker was one of the great brand inventions of the 20th century. It genuinely transformed how people thought about bananas. But it didn't change what the company was doing underneath. Eventually, the gap between the brand promise and the corporate reality becomes too wide to maintain. It always does. Second, monopoly power corrupts decision-making. United Fruit and Chiquita made increasingly bad decisions, backing coups, making terrorist payments, picking unwinnable trade wars, because for so long they could. When a company faces no real competition and operates in environments where it has more power than governments, it stops making decisions based on what is right or even what is sustainable. It makes decisions based on what it can get away with. Third, the true cost of a supply chain. Every banana you buy has a history. The extraordinary logistical achievement of getting fresh tropical fruit to a supermarket shelf in Munich at a price almost anyone can afford is genuinely remarkable. But that price has historically included costs that never appeared on any balance sheet: environmental damage, political interference, worker exploitation. As consumers become more aware of supply chains, companies that built their models on externalizing those costs face an existential reckoning. A footnote worth leaving with: the banana itself is in danger. The Cavendish, the variety you're eating right now, the one on which the entire Chiquita empire was rebuilt after the previous dominant variety was wiped out by disease, is under serious threat from a fungal infection called Tropical Race 4. History, it seems, has a sense of irony. The industry that overthrew governments to protect its fruit may one day be undone by something no army or lobbyist can fight. The Chiquita story is about a lot of things. It's about branding genius and political corruption. It's about the extraordinary power of a single company to shape the politics of entire countries. And it's about the gap that always opens eventually between who a company says it is and what it actually does. That gap is what Business Untold is here to explore, because the most interesting business stories are never just about business. If you enjoyed this one, the Nokia video is right here. And next week we're looking at Amazon's most spectacular failure, a phone that cost billions and lasted exactly 1 year on the market. Subscribe so you don't miss it.